Well, hi guys, it's that time. It's our Bible teaching snippet of the day. Well, today what I want to do, I think, is just do kind of a recap and a reset so I can get back on track and start teaching what I was talking about prior to me leaving to go to Israel. Now, since I've been home, I've talked about different biblical sites, different places, and the events that happened at some of those sites. And guys, this is my third trip to Israel, and I love to study the Bible and different accounts. And I could teach for months on just going through the Gospels of all of the biblical accounts that happened at different sites. But before I left to go to Israel, I spent from February the 3rd all the way through up to March the 5th, the day that I was getting ready to leave to go to Israel, talking about and actually answering a question that a viewer sent me and asked me why I decided to go vegan. I've got my shirt on, go vegan, and nobody gets hurt. But I wanted to answer that question. So real quick, let me just stop and say this. The one of the reasons that I wanted to go plant-based diet, that means I have abandoned eating any animal flesh whatsoever. I eat no meat, never will again, because I have understanding and knowledge now. And we're all at different places, and I'm growing just like you guys are. But I stopped eating animal meat, but at the same time, I have abandoned milk, eggs, and cheese, and any food that contains those items as well. And so I was teaching and explaining why I went to a plant-based diet. And there's two reasons. The first one now is because I have been teaching healing for about 10 years now. I've been going about laying hands on the sick, ministering healing to people. And there's many reasons. I started asking my father why some people seem to get healed, some people seemed not to stay healed, and some people never did get healed at all. And he started taking me into Scripture and showing me different things and teaching me that sometimes it's our lifestyle and things that we won't stop doing, things that we are doing that's keeping us held in bondage of sickness. I can give you a couple of three different things. Sometimes we won't change our diet. Now, whether that's eating meat or overeating, and you can't get well from a bad back if you are obesely overweight and don't make steps toward changing that. Okay, that's not to be mean to anybody, that's just being honest. You tell people the truth in love, right? And then there's also so many people who are on medicines to try to offset their illnesses, and until they get off of those medicines, they're going to have side effects from the medicines, and they can't get well. Their body cannot become whole because of the chemicals they're putting in it. So over time, God started teaching me that it was sickness and disease, for the most part, is linked into our diet. So he started showing me that his will was clearly listed in Genesis 1:29 when he told mankind what the perfect diet was for our bodies and for us to live in a nonviolent, peaceful environment. And that, we're not ever going to live in peace as long as we are instigating the bloodshed of other humans and even animals. But anyway, so that was one of the reasons. But here's my other reason that God was showing me. I started studying the Roman Catholic lie about eternal conscious torment in a place called hell. In the early church, the disciples, if we want to call them the apostles, the early church leaders, in fact, 5 out of the 6, if you want to call them seminaries or theological schools in the 300 to 400 time period, 5 out of 6 of those did not teach eternal conscious torment in a place called hell. 5 of them taught universal reconciliation, where over time God would work within people and their choices and to bring them to repentance and be able to save them. Some on this side of the living, and some on the other side when they enter into the afterlife. But anyway, during that long 2-year study that I was doing on that false doctrine that was put into the Roman Catholic Church in the 5th century by St. Augustine, okay? And then it spread from St. Augustine in the Roman Catholic Church into all of our spin-off denominations that started through Martin Luther's Protestant break-off of the Roman Catholic Church. Well, he brought a lot of the Roman Catholic teachings right here into what we believe here in America. So, but while I was studying this in depth about hell, I found a connection that really surprised me. These early church leaders for the first 350 years not only taught that God was going to reconcile all mankind and purify them of their sins and their wickedness so that they can enter into the kingdom either in this life or in the afterlife. Another thing came in that locked right in with it is that these same teachers and leaders of the early church were also vegetarians. And I wanted to understand more about what did they know that we don't know anymore? What did they know and teach and believe that they would themselves be required as leaders? They took an oath to be vegetarians, non-meat eaters, and they required the early Christians to be a part of the church to be vegetarians as well. So they knew something that we don't know, right? So all of this started coming together for me. So now the next thing I want to do today, I think maybe, before I left, I did 2 teachings from the Gospels about the fish accounts, and I even made I talked about Constantine and how let me just say it like this. Constantine, the Roman Emperor Constantine, did not convert to Christianity. Instead, he converted Christianity to his empire, okay? He converted original Christianity to blend in and agree with what he already had established in the Roman Empire. He was not trying to change his entire empire by telling people you have to believe that you can't eat meat anymore. No, he knows better than that, guys. He knows that what he would have to do is to convert Christianity to be more compliant to what people were already practicing. Now, what I found out during my research on the subject, the lie of hell, is that Constantine had a play in changing Christianity and what we believed, okay, which part of that is the doctrine of hell. See, those were Greek and Roman theologies or beliefs they had about their pagan gods, I should say. So the doctrine of hell came into the Roman Catholic Church through the influence of the Roman Empire. So now we believe all of this crazy stuff that's not true. And not just that Constantine changed our Bibles to agree with some of what was already being taught in religion. And that would be when our scriptures got modified to a degree so that now instead of it being Jesus multiplying the bread and the fruit, now it's the bread and the fish, because, you just put it in people's minds that God created animals for us to eat them and they're here for us and whatever, But see, guys, that's not really early Christianity. It was changed and modified by the Roman Empire, okay? And I did some teachings on that as well, okay? So what I want to talk about next, I think, before I close out today, what I want to mention to you here is that most of the time when I talk to people about us being vegetarians, not killing and harming animals and eating them anymore, the first thing Christians do, Christians are the worst, and I'm sorry, but we are. We want to use our Bible and just start hitting people over the head with it, demanding our rights. And see, I just don't see Jesus demanding his rights to do anything. He came to serve people and love creation. But here's the thing. Most of the verses they snatch out of context, and most of them are snatched out of context. I call it snatch-a-verse. And they will quote Paul. So today, before I sign off here, I want to talk to you a little bit about Paul. We've got two directions we can go with Paul. Either he was completely and absolutely opposed to what Jesus, James, Peter, and James and John, what the disciples themselves, the 11 disciples that walked with and knew Jesus personally, Paul either was completely opposed to them and taught the opposite of Jesus, as well as the apostles, or what is written by Paul was also modified slightly by the Roman Empire. And I'm going to give you an example to this today and let you decide what you want to believe. But I can show you that Paul is, according to what is written in our Bibles, is opposing James and Jesus. So let me show you this. In Acts chapter 15, verse 20, James, this is where, okay, now they're having this big, huge meeting in Jerusalem, okay, and for some reason, Paul felt like he should submit to the Jerusalem leaders, which the leader of them, the elder, was James, Jesus' brother, okay. He was the leader of the early Christian church in Jerusalem. And he came to talk to them about what he was teaching in all of these different Gentile cities. This is Acts chapter 15. So James says here, but we write to them that they abstained from the pollution of idols. So that's Acts chapter 15, verse 20. Okay, Acts 15:29, James says again in his letter to them that these Gentiles would abstain from meats offered to idols. We see again in Acts 21:25, James says that they keep themselves from things offered to idols. And over in Revelation chapter 2, verse 14, this is in red, Jesus said this, but I have a few things against thee, because thou hast there them that hold the doctrine of Balaam, who taught Balak to cast a stumbling block before the children of Israel. Now here's the last part. Are you listening? I know I stumbled a little on that verse, but Jesus is saying that Balaam had Balak to teach the Israelites to eat things sacrificed to idols. So Jesus himself says this. Then in Revelation 2:20, notwithstanding, I have a few things against you, because you put up with that woman Jezebel, which calleth herself a prophetess, and to teach and to seduce my servants to commit fornication and to eat things sacrificed to idols. So right here I've got 5 different places where it tells us that God does not want his people eating meat or things, not just meat, but all things that was sacrificed to idols. Now, what we don't understand is that most of the sacrifices in the Old Testament to the God of Israel was not meat. It was grains and fruits and wine and bread and all kinds of stuff, but it was less meat than it was other things. That's a different teaching. But anyway, so from these 5 passages I just read to you, now we can flip over to 1 Corinthians 10:25 through 30, and this is where we find Paul going against what James and Jesus, okay, the church in Jerusalem, because now look, when James wrote that letter and sent it out, Paul went back with the other 3 men to deliver the letter and to say what was decided at the Jerusalem council. So Paul knew 100% without a doubt whatsoever what the decision was by the early apostles. That would be James and Peter and John, okay? All of the leaders that was in Jerusalem that day. So we know Paul knew about what was decided because he was there in the meeting. He's the one that called the meeting to get their approval of what he was teaching. And now in Corinthians, he is telling people that it's okay for them to eat the meat that was offered to idols. I don't have time to read that to you today. Maybe I can pick up on it tomorrow if you want me to. But please, you can read it yourself. It's 1 Corinthians 10:25 through 30. And Paul says that it is a matter of conscience for each person to decide. But he doesn't see anything wrong with that. Now, see, I don't think Paul would have actually wrote that knowing that he's opposed to Jesus himself as well as the Jerusalem Council. Guys, I'm going to sign off here, and I'm going to see you here tomorrow. Bye-bye.